Well, welcome everyone. So glad that you are here today for Arts Rich Lessons. I'm Phyllis Paisley, and I'll be one of the hosts, and I'll be joined with my colleague at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Roger Kelly. So, and thank you for the conversation that we were able to enjoy before we started the recording. I'll go ahead and start to share my screen. And I'm also going to place in the chat, as soon as I copy this link, I'll place in the chat a link to the slides. I heard some of you mention in the pre-conversation that you might need to step out, and we want to provide that access for you to view it and access the resources that are here as we go along. I'm going to press share and hope that works. Okay, so again, thank you for being here today for Arts Rich Lessons for the gifted teacher and their students. Today, we're going to be exploring that which is in the arts toolbox of visual arts, dance, theater, and music. And we hope that you will, in today's session, find some easy ways to include the arts in your lessons, to enhance your lessons, and then also share these opportunities. We'll be borrowing from all of these art forms today. And in borrowing from them, we hope that you and your students will engage in these benefits because it really makes learning fun. So we're going to start today with visual arts, and I'm going to share some information about something called sketchnoting. And so I can't see everybody on the call right now, but I'm going to change my screen and hopefully I'll be able to see you all. Is sketchnoting something that is already in your personal toolbox? A thumbs up maybe if you already know, or okay, all right. So as you can see on this screen here, sketchnoting, from the name, it uses sketches and other visuals as a form of note-taking, which can stimulate areas of the brain that are sometimes neglected if words are your primary means. I'm going to move on to the next slide. The person who is doing this sketch note-taking today, you're going to meet him later on another slide, but it is a customized process that is very friendly to both those who enjoy the process of doodling and those that are more word-friendly, and everybody in between, actually, that you can find a way to make it work best for you. I was introduced to this for the first time at the Missouri Art Education Association conference. And as Roger and I were preparing for today, Roger, if you wanted to say something about this, you're welcome to, but he shared with me some images of some finished sketch note presentation things that he picked up at a session when he was that when you were in Europe, Roger?
Yeah, it was a Learning by Design conference in Brussels. And what was interesting is they brought somebody in that they were paid to do this in many of the sessions, so that then there were these visual representations of sessions when they were done. But at the same time frame, she came in and worked 2 or 3 days early with kids from the private school, teaching them how to do this. And then they got to sit alongside her and try to learn how about and practice what she was doing as well. So some of these are her work and some of them are student work, but it was an interesting process to see them learning a different style of note taking.
And from my interaction with gifted learners, I was a music teacher in a K-5 setting for more than 30 years, and the gifted students were my students also. And I noticed that some of them struggle with perfectionism, or some of them may have exceptional abilities in one area and real deficits in another. And here's one of the things that I think sketchnoting can really help with, not only gaining literacy, but releasing some of that perfectionism. And we're hopefully going to try to release some a little bit later. So I hope maybe nearby you have access to just something to write with and a pen or a pencil. We may do some experimenting later on, and later in our presentation today, having the access to those writing implements and something to write with and on will be helpful in the music section as well. So this is the person that I mentioned to you earlier that was doing those sketch notes that were behind what I was sharing earlier. His name is Doug Neal, and he has a series of resources that are referenced in the resource notes that you'll find at the end of this session that are called Verbal to Visual. And he has some resources for people who are very, very at the beginning stages of their sketchnoting work. And this is just one of the pages from the book that's basically a blank page, but they're encouraging the students or the beginners in sketchnoting just squiggle and triangles and shapes, and just filling the page with interesting lines and just familiarizing them with that process. And then moving on, another activity actually has them put something in a linear sequence, like a recipe, that they might sketch it out instead of writing it out, or using a combination of words and images. This online tutorial series, if you want to get started on it, is and can be self-directed. It can be done just with the students, or it can be done for the teacher for in-class facilitation. And this little excerpt that I'm going to share here is he talking about essential lines, curvature lines, and accents lines, and then some guidelines for their use. So what I'm going to do is try this video. The other ones did not have audio, and I forgot to press the little check marks. So can you please tell me if you cannot hear, and then I'll restart the video.
Without those marks. With the scissors, we've got a more complicated shape. On this one, I think it's helpful to focus on one half of the scissors at a time. We've got the straight edge of one cutting blade, and then swing back to complete that metal part. Then we've got the handle. I'll start with the outer line, as with the ruler, just going with roughly accurate proportions. No need to be exact. Then the inner line to make sure we've got that gap for the fingers. Then we take care of the other blade, starting again with the straight edge, looping back, going behind the first blade, and then tackling the handle again, noting that this one needs to be a bit smaller and more circular for the thumb. Finally, the screw adds a final touch, like the half-inch marks on the ruler, that helps to show right away that this thing here is a pair of scissors. When drawing those scissors, I chose the first mark, that straight edge of the first blade, intentionally. Drawing that line created the most helpful reference point to then get all of the following marks down. I think that's worth paying attention to, the first line of an object that you draw. Try to pick the line that will be most helpful when completing the rest of the object. In the case of the roll of Scotch tape, I think that the most helpful first line is the circle.
So you can see the rest of the video at your leisure. It's one of the resources that's available. I captured a couple of screenshots to just help you know what was coming next. And he completed that roll of tape, and then also concentrated on simplifying the objects. If he were trying to reproduce the set of headphones as they exist in real life, it would be less identifiable and a lot more lines to draw. So finally, the curvature lines and the accent lines are used sparingly, and they add just a suggestion of weight or solidity. I don't know, being solid. That's what I meant to say. And then the accent lines showing an action. And the final bit of wisdom that he shared with us was, for both curvature lines and the accent lines, the fewer lines, the better for the most effective line drawings of objects. So the next one that I am going to share with you, I will tell you I did some experimentation with this, and it does not always work on iPhones, but it did work well on a tablet, and it does work well on a desktop. This is a resource from Google, and if nothing else, this resource is fun to do, and your students will become engaged with it. And in an even more profound way, they can become less centered on perfectionism. And I think that will become evident as we go forward. So this is a game, and I'm going to play the game and demonstrate, and then let you play. So in under 20 seconds, I am to draw a popsicle. I hope you'll be able to hear the audio, because to me, that's the most fun part. Ready?
I see knee, or party hat, or nose, or square, or door. I see cup. Oh, I know, it's popsicle.
So it's an artificial intelligence game that this Quick Draw Google community has come up with, and you'll see in the data. I'm going to do one more for bread, and then I'm going to put the link in the chat so you can play, because it is so much fun. You're all muted, so it'll be good. So here, I'll do one more for bread. Let's see.
I see knee, or line, or nose. Oh, I know, it's bread.
I didn't even get the loaf going. So I'm going to stop this and copy the link and place it in the chat for you so that you can try it for a few moments. And I hope you get audio, because that's the best part, especially when you draw and it cannot tell you what you're doing. So enjoy. About 20 more seconds.
Phyllis, when you're done, would you also show them the page with the hundreds of thousands of examples? Thank you.
Yes, I will. We'll give you about 15 more seconds to play. It's addictive, I'll just tell you. It's addictive. Okay. I'm going to go back to my screen share and share with you the data piece. I'm going to go back to my presentation, and this link, Quick Draw with Google Data, I'll put that in the chat too. But again, it's part of the resources that I linked earlier. It has, here's what 50 million drawings look like. And what's very cool about this is when you pick a drawing, like I'll pick cake right here, you are seeing 110,861 drawings of cake that someone did somewhere along the line. I'm just zooming in here so we can see this one for a minute. And it shows you each stroke that the person did to create that. And I cannot think of, if you have a student who struggles with alternative perspectives, if you have a student who thinks they can't draw, that if they want help drawing a cake, they could hover on this and allow themselves to copy it. Or certainly as you're looking through and seeing all of the incarnations of what is a cake, that sense of desire for perfectionism might be mitigated. So it is very fun and very interesting to look at that. And it's both of these resources are in the slide deck. So finally, I'm going to just share a bit of information about connecting the standards. The fine arts standards are divided into 4 categories that are listed here. And there are 11 subcategories, I guess, that are called anchor standards, just illustrating what artists know and do. And so for this particular aspect in visual arts that we're borrowing in sketchnoting, I see a correlation and alignment with the 3 of the create standards, 2 of the present standards, and 1 of the connect ones. In terms of the other content standards alignment, I think it's going to depend on what your topic is to a certain extent. But if your topic happened to be life science or physical science, I could see that either the linear aspect of life cycle or the relationship between energy and force could lend itself very, very conducively to a visual representation, and sketchnoting might be the way to get there. So that concludes the borrowing from visual arts. Are there any questions or comments you'd like to make before we hop into our next subject area? As I said, the resource links are in the slide deck. Are there any questions or observations? I hope you'll give sketchnoting a try.
I think that the kids would like the draw with Google and the sketchnoting too, but the draw with Google is pretty addictive.
Very addictive. I was awake far too late into the night last night doing it again. Oh, here's another one. Let me try that.
I'm assuming that over time our sketching would get better because, you know, like I could do the really simple things, but not the 2 complex ones that was given to me. I couldn't do. So.
And that's one of the tutorial elements that I watched that I didn't display, that you can dig more deeply, is draw with me, that he is drawing a shirt and you like practice the lines and just gain in your skills to be able to see those essential lines and then to reproduce them. Yeah. Any other questions or comments about that? Well, great. We're going to hop back in and delve into the land of music with Roger Kelly.
You can go ahead and go to the next slide. We're going to start here with a small story. And while this comes from an orchestra director, and that would be music teaching in the field of music, I'm also going to hope by going through the story that people can start to see that it can apply to many, many other academic areas. So in Liberty Public Schools, there was a lock-in later at night, and they were going to spend the night in the school and having many rehearsals. They were getting ready for a performance at a national convention, and she needed some extra rehearsal time that could be super focused, but also had to have some fun. And in the middle of a very intense rehearsal, the director stops and she kind of firmly puts her stand down and her hands down, and they know she means business. And she is quiet for a moment, and she said, "Listen, if what you're playing is the film score, then raise your hand and tell me what is the scene from the movie that you're playing the film score." And it was very interesting because the room kind of got quiet, and then there were a few small hands that started to go up with some type of response afterwards, and they were all acceptable. But then one of the bass players, who could also be a little bit of a class comedian or at least outgoing, he raises his hand and says, "I appreciate my fellow classmates, but I think very differently." And it starts with that the room was filled with smoke, and when she hit the stairs in that red dress that form fitted every curve that she was wearing and was slightly off the shoulder, she came down the stairs to grab everyone's attention and made her way from the doorway to the bar. And the conductor goes, "Play it." She puts her hands up and she's ready to conduct it. She gave them no time to think other than just immediately play what he had described. And it was really fascinating that the kids played totally different, because there was a room of 80 kids that now had the same thing in their head all at the same time, making the music match the story. And as she's put down after, she said, "That was pretty amazing. And of course, I want you to play it that way every time." But it wasn't as important what Sam said as it was important that there was a visualization that allowed all of us to be in the same place at the same time, which made our music sound that much better. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try a little bit of this, and I want to be cautious that I know not everybody in the room may be a musician, but we're going to try to do this on a level that everybody can participate. And I chose this to be global, not any particular grade level and not any particular academic area, so that you can practice the idea and then mold it to your own needs in your classroom. So Phyllis, would you advance the slide? So if you have pen and paper, you may need that just to copy some notes. But the first one, we're really just going to kind of react to something verbally. And the main thing is you got to get in a world that there's no right or wrong answer. You've got to let your creative fly. And if it feels slightly uncomfortable, be brave enough to be vulnerable and say it anyhow, because it's a safe space for you to be in. Phyllis, would you advance the slide? So the prompt is, if I share with you my story, will you share your dollar with me? Now we're going to listen to this in a song, but when we're done, I'm going to come back to that prompt and ask you to give me some feedback or things of what would be your story. If you want me to give you $1, then what story are you willing to share with me? Phyllis, would you start the audio clip?
I will. Sorry, it advanced. Here we go.
I need a dollar, that's what I need. Hey, hey. Well, I need a dollar, that's what I need. Hey, hey. Said I need a dollar, that's what I need. And if I share with you my story, would you share your dollar with me?
So it's a fun clip, and it only says, I need $1 about 1 million times in it, but it still comes to around to the end of the verse to say, but if I share my story with you, will you share $1 with me? Now it's open to all of you in the room. Can you tell me what story are you going to share with me that's worth my $1? And the responses are just flying in. Unmute. There we go. Come on. And if not, what would your kids say?
I had a story.
Go.
I shared it with the people who came on the call early. I had a deer right outside my door. That worth $1?
Absolutely. There you go. Anybody else? What's your story?
Okay, I've unmuted twice and muted back. I have a dog scratching outside my door wanting to come in and pay attention. So it's divided time. How much time do I have and how much is it worth?
There you go. Brian?
I was just thinking I'm taking my kids and wife today at 4:30 this afternoon. We're going to go see are going to attend our first same-sex wedding. I'm very excited to share the day with my dear friends.
Yeah, awesome. It is interesting. That's 5 of us just really put on the spot, but to do this over and over and over and over in a classroom or with some gifted kids can be, they start to develop an area of trust and what story are they willing to tell. I was really fascinated by teaching in the inner city. They wanted to tell the story, but you had to create a safe environment that could bring some of that out. And sometimes it was a painful something that needed to be shared, and sometimes it was happy, and sometimes it was exciting, and it was everything in between. But the main thing was, could a song that was simple clip from it, could that give somebody a prompt that could, rather than like, will you just start writing, can that prompt help have you, can it get you started on your writing and get you away from your writer's block of, I don't know where to start? Well, I can tell you a story if it's worth my $1. And so it's an interesting prompt to be able to use. Phyllis, we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to tell, you made me think, one of my colleagues who teaches in an inner city, this is her prompt at the beginning of the day. Tell me something good. And then everybody has to, they go around the circle. And even if it's a small thing, like I woke up today, it gets that verbal going. It creates that safe environment you were talking about. I'll share.
Yeah, that's good.
There we go.
So the next one is, we're actually going to have you write. So get your pen and your paper ready. And I'm not going to let you go probably more than 30 seconds to a minute. We'll see how this goes. But the prompt is, I'm going to play a piece of music, and you have to start from your head at least, once upon a time. But remember, I'm going to play the film score. You have to write or describe to me what is the scene. Is everybody ready? Do you have questions? I'm going to play the film score, but you are going to tell me what is the scene that the film score is backing up. All right, we're ready. Phyllis, let's have you restart it, please. Phyllis, would you please replay it? Okay, start writing. That's at least enough to let you get started on something, but would you unmute and would you share where your brain went on, I have to write the film score. I mean, I have to write the story to this film score. What are some beginning thoughts?
In my house right now, there are lots of old westerns being played, so that's where my brain went, was like that old western film where the horses are running and there's flags flying. But that's
good.
What's on the TV right now at my house.
Brian put his in here that it's an end of a big international race where the winner had a hard-fought victory, overcoming many obstacles, both personal and thrust upon them, standing on a dais, then get recognition from the audience and the host, and even from the main obstacle providers. Got it.
Brian, they already made that movie.
About 100 million times.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, let's go ahead. I'll go next one, Larry. Who else wants to share?
I'm teasing you, Brian. I'm teasing you.
Mine was the ice capades. The skater fell down, regrouped, got up, and finished to a standing ovation.
There you go. Anybody else want to hit on this?
Oh, let's see. I've got several things going on over here. I hope there's not too much noise in the background. But so I thought it was a magic show. And so earlier on in the show, the magician had disappeared the cute little dog, and it's supposed to come back, and it didn't come back, and everybody's really worried. And then that at the end, that's when the dog reappears. So there you go. There's mine. I'm pretty sure they made that movie too.
Isn't it also interesting that most of what somebody, or if there was a similar something that you all included, there was action. And so it would tell us that if we're trained in music, we knew something about how that's being played at the time. It's interesting for people in an audience, their visualizations, while they might just be listening for entertainment purposes, it might show action in how they're interpreting any type of visualization they would put with it. What's interesting also is a variation of this is a teacher that would say, here are 3 music clips for you. Here are 3 paragraphs. Will you please match the paragraph to the sound score? And it's a very interesting way to deepen the thinking and take it to a deeper level where there again is no right or wrong answer. What's important is working with gifted students to say, now using what you know, not just in music, but everything, why did you make that choice and what evidence do you have that C matches with B? And it's a very interesting process to take something you're starting out with, using it to get a prompt for creative writing, but then you can take it and your imagination can be the end of how many other types of ways you can involve music within your classroom. But it is simple from a fact when you say, if this is the film score, then you can open up your world to a million other prompts that you can go out of that. Phyllis, would you please show me the next slide? And next slide. So in looking at some standards and things that we would align to in the arts of this type of work, is it would align to our first strand of teaching kids to be creative, the creative process. And we would want them to be able to generate and conceptualize artistic ideas and work. We want them to organize and develop their artistic ideas, works, and then we want them to refine and complete it. And you can go through these 3 steps, but what you did is you used your music as your prompt. That was your something to get their creative going and flowing, but then you can go through all of the steps afterwards in a creative process when you're trying to help kids get better at that. Would you please go to the next slide? And then when I wanted to see if I could also find alignment, and remember, I'm not saying mastery, I'm saying alignment that gives us permission to align it to it on a state or national standard. This was from reading literal text, grades 6 through 12. And there were many things as you went across here, like describe how a particular text plot unfolds in a series of episodes, as well as how the characters respond or change as the plot moves towards resolution. One is that could be something they're reading, but at the same time frame, that could also be something that they're writing. And you're going to take them through many steps. And that's just one example of, you can find many in ELA of ways that it can align. Would you please go to the next slide, Phyllis, you got a new name today. And then this was looking in ELA at the skills that you take on to the task you have as becoming a writer. And what was very interesting was there were many things in here. This was grade 6 I went after, but it was helping kids develop narratives, and they did, including poems, about real or imagined experiences with clearly defined characters, well-structured events, sequences, narrative techniques, and relevant descriptive details. And what's different about it is you started from, here's a music something to get your head going, but now let us look at all these ELA skills that we have to do to make sure that for it to become the story for this particular film score, what can we do to develop our narrative? How are we going to make sure that our characters are clearly defined? It sets you up wide open for work you're going to do, but hopefully punches up the motivation behind it, because when you're done, does it match our original film score that we wanted to work with? It's a real simple, short little idea, but I wanted to do something that somebody doesn't have to have music training in order to be able to use it in their classroom, that may help them, especially with some gifted kids that bring a lot of skills in, but can this push you at a higher level real quickly and early on? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. Are there any questions, comments, or observations about the music portion that you wanted to share? All right, well, hearing none, I'm going to take you into our theater, the realm of theater. And I'm going to share with you something called shadow puppetry. This may be something that you are already familiar with. I had a passing of familiarity with it and was privileged enough to attend a puppetry class online through an arts integration training, and also with the Springfield Arts Integration conference this summer, where I actually took these photographs. So the photographs you're seeing are the work of the people who were a part of that team. Shadow puppetry, I just have the greatest respect and almost wish that I had embraced it and knew about it more when I was a practicing music educator. It does require very simple tools, easy access. It's very adaptable. Low cost, short time investment with really, really high rewards and built-in differentiation. I wanted to share with you, just even examining this image, I made this puppet, this great big moon here, and some of my colleagues made these more intricate star shapes. So it's built-in differentiation for kids who have varying fine motor skills in terms of their ability to draw or to cut, but it is powerful. The benefits of shadow puppetry are popping up here on the screen. As a performer of it, I was amazed at all of the levels of critical thinking that I had to do in terms of constructing the dialogue for this. This was a social story that we were acting out between the frog and the hippo, who were, the frog was being friends with a third party, that the hippo was setting an ultimatum. If you're friends with them, you can't be friends with me, kind of interpersonal thing. And so deciding what were the essential elements of the dialogue. We didn't write it, we did it more improvisatory, but it could be written. But it did facilitate communication. It requires collaboration by its very nature, because somebody has to shine the flashlight. Somebody has to help make the decisions. And like other elements of theater that you might approach, you might think there are dealing with space, with costume, with script, with lots of elements that are just absent in shadow puppetry. It is such a big return on the investment of the time. So connecting the standards, it goes with many visual arts and theater standards that are listed here, the 3 Roger mentioned just a moment ago, along with the actual presentation of the work. And then finally, synthesizing and relating the knowledge from their personal experiences to create art. I did add a screenshot here from the Fine Art Standards for Theater. The way they're structured, it shows pre-K on the left all the way through high school on the right. And that making strong choices to convey meaning is definitely happening. In English language arts, there are correlations between the speaking and the listening curriculum. And of course, in the Moon and Stars example, between the physical science and the universe of the stars. And of course, you can't do shadow puppetry without acknowledging wave properties in science. You're dealing with light waves. You are dealing with sound waves if you are providing any sound, either vocal or a musical sound. And all of that, which will be an aid to your storytelling or something that a problem to be solved. So that brings us to a close about theater. Do you have any questions or comments about this little glimpse into shadow puppetry?
I just love this. I'm going to use this with my students for stop motion. So it's a section that I've used before where they use paper, but I've never done it as a shadow. So like I've got a million ideas now. Thank you.
I'm so
And
glad.
the music, oh my gosh, I'm going to use those as like little teasers coming in. So thank you all.
And Marissa, my contact information will be mixed in here, but feel free to reach out. I have my own shadow puppet stage that's in my garage, and they're super easy to make with things you probably have access to, including the science fair boards, those three side things, just cutting out the center of that, covering it with white paper, and you have yourself a stage that works really, really well.
Thank you so much.
Any other comments before we leave behind and do our next little brain teaser?
I was just going to throw out to Marissa, there's also bunraku puppetry or bunraku style, where it's like shadow puppetry in some respects, but the puppets can be about 2/3 actual human size. And it takes teamwork to operate them.
Oh,
So but they're easy. You can make them out of newspaper and tape. So those have been a lot of fun. I've done those before as well.
and I went back to in the presentation because I wanted you to see, can you see the little piece of black tape that's literally taping the stick to the piece of paper on my happy little moon, and the tape that's taping that white piece of paper to the back of our stage? It's minimal cost and high return. I totally recommend it. So our brain teaser. I am going to ask you to experience physical science 9 through 12, relationship between energy and forces. I've made it bigger because I'm a person who needs that little bitty text made a little bit larger. So please just take a look at this and see how might you guide, or what suggestions might you make for a student in your class, a gifted student in your class, that is going to then develop and use a model to show objects as they are working in an electric or magnetic field. Feel free to unmute and share what you might suggest to them. And if you're like, it's Saturday, I don't feel like guessing and I don't feel like contributing, thank you very much. You can just give me a thumbs up and I'll move on. It's okay. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I also come from a theater background. And so when I read this in my head, I get this idea of passing out positive or negative charges to the kids, and then having them walk around and interact with each other the way they would, depending on what the other person's charge is. So they would either be moving away from each other or drawing toward one another. And that's my very limited science knowledge right there.
Thank you for sharing. Well, as you can probably guess, and you were right on target, it has theater elements and also movements, or also connections to dance or movement. And I did use both of those words intentionally because a lot of people have a sense that, oh, I can't dance, or dance is not an option for me. But everyone who can walk, or even if you can't walk, you can move parts of your body. And so I'm just going to share a few images to inspire you about ways that our bodies can move. If we were in a physical space together, I would probably invite you to do some movement with me, and maybe even mirror some of these poses that you are seeing of people in motion and then stopping that motion. And then asking if you have anything that comes to mind that might show using movement, these relationships of energy and force. It's something we could even do with our hands on Zoom, that if this is one force and this is a second, that if they are both positively charged or both negatively charged, but if they are opposite charged, that it would cause that different reaction using movement. If you want to know more about dance, I recommend this video, at least a short segment of it. It's only about 8 minutes long. We're not going to watch today, but it helps you understand the elements of dance, including time and force and levels and space. And when you are using movement in your classroom, there are concerns about logistics and furniture and safety, and whether or not the students have this cooperation skills, or whether their attitudes and bias that may be present is conducive to moving. So there are some pedagogical things to just set an environment that is friendly to movement. But one of the greatest quotes that I shared here at the bottom of the screen is from a dance instructor and choreographer who is a teaching artist and works in arts integration. His name is Harlan Brownlee and lives in the Kansas City area. And I've seen him do this with both adult learners and student learners. What do you do if you both want to be in the same space? You give your friend the gift of that space and you find another space to work in. Here is a video clip of Harlan at work with a group of fourth graders who are examining a hybrid engine. It's part of Project Lead the Way, and it is part of the launch series. And he is using movement with these students to look at the components of a hybrid engine and the characteristics of movements that might be possible. You're going to see him in just a minute walk over and give some coaching, which on the dance curriculum side of things is dealing with levels of movement. But on the science curricular side of things, or Project Lead the Way piece, it's about the potential energy that is within a battery that is being stored and then utilized and then restored and utilized. So at this time, they are then coordinating their movements to indicate that particular aspect. And then in the final little piece here, it is looking at the sense of timing for the different motions that are happening for the different components of the engine. And then one portion works prior to or after another, and trying to work out the timing aspects of that. So that's just an example of the way movement or dance could be in your classroom. So as you are, here's another little brain teaser, as you're looking at the presence of the sun, moon, and stars in the sky over time, can you think of a way in a classroom, if you are working on this, how learning and understanding of that might be shown through movement? Connecting the standards again, the create ones that we mentioned earlier, plus that synthesize and relating knowledge to make art. And in this dance, choreographers analyze, evaluate, refine, and document their work to communicate meaning as they're refining their artistic work. So as we bring this part to a close and borrowing from movement, are there any other questions that you would like to, or comments or observations you would like to share before we move on to our final segment?
Hey, I'm going to say goodbye and get ready for the next session that I'm doing. Okay, bye.
Fine, Christine.
It was awesome.
I'm so glad you came, and all the other information's in the slide deck. Basically, it's just resources. Don't forget your teachers. They're your best resources.
Yep. Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
Christine. Bye. So I'm going to bring our section to a close here with, you have local resources at your fingertips. Your colleagues, your music teachers, your theater teachers, band teachers, visual arts teachers, all of these folks can be a resource for you if you are tackling a problem. You can also use the arts as a place to draw units of study, or projects. And I'm going to share a brief story about opera. A gifted teacher in my district was new to the gifted program and inherited a unit on opera. And she said to me, I don't know how to do this. I hate opera. I don't know what to do. And so I advised her to find a way to become comfortable with opera, to find some aspect of it that ignited their passion, and then to seek resources to meet their needs. She found a connection because she'd done some traveling in China and had attended a Chinese opera, and then found a way to do a cross-cultural comparison between European style opera and the Chinese opera, and then found aspects that she absolutely enjoyed. In addition to those local resources that we encourage you to take advantage of, there are resources near you. And although we're going to highlight 3 specific areas, I know Mexico, Missouri has the Presser Performing Arts Center right there. They have wonderful resources for you to go to, for your students to go to just acquaint yourself with different art forms. And they do a lot at Presser that's diverse. It's not just theater. So there are places all over, and I encourage you to get to know those local resources, because they are sources for field trips, artists in residence, access to resource libraries, student opportunities, and professional development. So one that I'd also like for all of you to be aware of is the Missouri Alliance for Arts Education sponsors monthly sessions of the Missouri Arts Integration Network. It's a professional learning community. It's free. We meet the last Monday of the month. We don't meet in December, and we don't meet in June or July, but we meet the other Mondays of the month. And we're going to start 4:30 at the next year in January. So our October and November meetings are still at 4 o'clock, but starting in January, we're going to kick those off at 4:30, and we invite you to be a part of it if you just want to get inspired or get connected or get some help on something you're working on. Here's a little focus on Kansas City. We've got Starlight Theater with some great community resources, 2 of which are listed here, about social awareness and then connecting community. We have the Kansas City field trip group that helps plan them. It's a project of Uncover KC. We've got Messner Puppet Theater that has both artists in residence and internships. We've got the Heart of America Shakespeare Festival that offers in-school programs and custom curriculum. We've got the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, and they have an Art Deco workshop coming up on the 21st for $6. They offer some really great PD and great resources. And finally, we've got 3 PD sponsored through the Kansas Missouri Kennedy Center Partners in Education. One of their partners is Kansas City Young Audiences. They have a ton of resources that you can access. In the Springfield area, there's lots more than I'm sharing here today, but I want to draw your attention to Springfield Little Theater, who has great series, outreach, and workshops, as well as the Springfield Ballet. There's a Springfield Symphony. There's lots of great things in Springfield. This last is a poetry out loud. If you're an ELA kind of oriented person, Marilyn Young has a great blog and resources to bring poetry out loud into your school. So I encourage you to check those out. And in St. Louis, of course, we have St. Louis Symphony Orchestra, in particular, Picture the Music Art Contest and Express the Music Writing Contests, and then the St. Louis Art Museum with live virtual field trips and educator resources, and COCA EDU with professional learning, residencies, and student opportunities. The last one in St. Louis I'll share is Opera on the Go. Since we started my story with opera, they have 2 virtual ones in particular that are available to you. Trailblazers in Opera, which has a more BIPOC slant on things, and Opera on the Go. And then just for fun, Roger was telling me, I was telling him I was going to do my opera story, and he introduced me to Blob Opera. And so I'm going to go to this link and let you play. I'm going to put this in the chat. It is so much fun. These little singers. Okay, oh, where's the chat? Let me put this in. Let me see. There we go. Oh, wait, I sent it just to Roger. Let me send it to everybody. There we go. So as you drag him up, the pitches change. As you add singers' voices, you have harmony. As you move back and forth, you have vowel changes and harmony. If you play long enough, the mezzo soprano and the soprano come into play. I encourage you to just have some fun with blob opera. So let's see. This brings us to the end of our presentation. We have resources here for all the different components that we shared and all the arts organizations that we mentioned. And we're happy to take any final questions. I want to thank you for being with us today.
Before I move on, Phyllis, you said you were going to share your email with
Oh,
me?
sure. I'll type it
Thank
in
you.
right now. In the chat. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today and being part of our virtual Gifted Association of Missouri presentation about arts rich lessons. Thank you, Roger, for giving up a Saturday. Thank all of you for giving up a Saturday for your professional learning. We're delighted to be your partners. Feel free to reach out to either one of us. If there's anything we can do to support you, we're happy to do it.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.